Hey there and welcome to this show, and this one is super exciting because we've got a topper. I mean like 496 out of 500 in the ICSE exam in 10th standard. I mean I can't even imagine that. But I have with me today Ananya Patwardhan, and let me quickly ask her to tell you how she did so well, because there's nothing like that I can tell you, okay? So Ananya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And it's so good to have you, because these people watching the show are all saying, you know, you're getting us all these experts, but how about getting us a student who can tell us exactly what they did?
True.
So tell me, this ICSE first rank that happened 2 years back in 2015.
That's right.
So I remember at that time you told everybody you wanted to be a lawyer.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you that she's got the rank 19, yes, 19, in the CLAT, the Common Law Admission Test, which was held recently. And she's headed to National Law University in Bangalore. But before we get to the CLAT piece, let me talk about her ICSE. So tell me, Ananya, this ICSE is like a big chunk of information, a lot of books. And
yes.
So tell us, when did you actually start preparing for it?
So I started preparing for this in the second term of 9th grade. So that's, so I spent almost 1.5 years preparing my 10th standard syllabus. So by the time I was done with 9th standard, I had already completed a significant chunk of my 10th standard syllabus.
Okay, the whole thing, you done it on your own, or the school had
The school had helped us with it.
Okay.
So we had already completed a significant portion of our 10th standard syllabus in 9th itself.
Okay. And then the entire 10th standard you were just revising and revising.
So the first half of 10th standard we completed the remaining part, and then the latter part of the 10th standard we focused on presentation, revision, and just making sure that we know our stuff right.
Yeah, wow, 496 out of 500. I'm almost going to ask you where you lost those 4 marks. But without talking about that, tell me, give us some tips, some advice, because it's a lot of volume out there.
It is.
And how can they actually approach that? And let's talk about the starting. At the start, you feel like this is a mountain I need to climb. So what would you advise to them?
So I think one tip to remember is that the key is consistency. So if you keep on working from the very beginning, if you're regular with your stuff, you do your homework on time, you make sure that all your tests are well prepared for, then you've completed a major chunk of the syllabus that you have to.
Okay.
And towards the end, that helps in revision, because then you know your content well from the very beginning. That makes it all the more easier to revise. You don't have much stress towards the end. So one thing that I would definitely recommend is that you begin preparing from the very beginning.
Right.
So you shouldn't spend like 2 months just goofing around, not doing much, because that doesn't help towards the end.
Yeah.
So if you begin by reading the chapters by yourself at home, in addition to the way they teach in schools, and if you make your own notes, if you make sure that you solve the questions behind the chapters in the textbooks, then this just helps you to make sure that you know your content really well, so that later you can focus on your revision presentation part of the paper.
Okay, so when you say answer the questions at the back of the chapter, so do you take your prescribed textbook, or did you buy like a whole lot of other books and started to answer those as well?
No, I really focused on the ICSE recommended textbooks, because very rarely do they ask questions beyond those textbooks.
Okay. You spoke about making notes.
Yes.
Now I know that note making is a science in itself.
It is.
So tell us some of your precious tips on how you made those notes.
So, especially for subjects like history or geography, while reading the chapter initially, I used to scribble small notes in the margins of the textbook itself. So whenever I used to read it again, I could see what was going on in my mind when I initially began reading the chapter.
Okay.
So if I'm reading a segment of a history chapter and I'm making those small notes, I'm using that to understand the chapter well by myself. And another thing is, because you write it, that helps, because understanding is usually better when you read handwritten notes.
Yeah.
It could be anything that you're comfortable with. You could maybe make a date line to remember the dates in history, the different battles and meetings. Or in geography, you could take a map of India, for example. While studying, say, mines and minerals, you could mark the places where the mines are located, the geographical significance of that, the factors affecting the location of the mines, and all those things. So it's basically these small tips which are specific to each subject that really help, because then you do your self-study in addition to what school has already taught you.
Yeah.
So it has a cumulative effect, and it's really important for your self-understanding and then the way you represent it in the paper.
Yeah, and you're dynamically engaging with the content as you're
So it's your
making
active participation.
Yes.
You're not just sitting in a classroom listening to the teacher speak.
So Ananya, students often complain, there are 10 subjects in ICSE.
Yes.
And they tell me, we study a few, 2 days one, 2 subject and 2 days the next. And by the time we've done with all the 10 subjects, it's 20 days. So I've forgotten, So tell us, how do you actually schedule your entire revision?
So I think the trick is planning your week in such a way that you repeat a subject after, say, 3-4 days, so that you haven't lost touch with what you studied 2-3 days back. You can maybe study 2 subjects a day.
Okay.
So 1 or 2 chapters of a subject each day, because then you also have a bit of a change, so you don't get bored by just science or social science. You can mix things up.
Right.
Match a language with maths, for example.
Okay.
So in that way, you can also keep your attention well, so you don't get bored easily. And you also remain in touch with the parts that you've done before.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I figure a certain chapter you would have probably done multiple times before you went in for an exam.
Yes, true.
So some students say, I've done it before. So what do I do again with the same chapter? So can you tell us how you can do it differently?
Yeah, sure. So the preparation of the chapter needs to be done multiple times and in multiple ways. So the first would be actually going through the chapter, reading it really well, making sure you understand everything that's in it. One tip that I would give for the reading part is that you read it in chunks.
Okay.
So it doesn't make sense reading the entire chapter at one go, because like you said with the subjects, you tend to forget what you read initially.
Okay.
So you read a part, read a chunk, make sure you've understood it, make small notes related to that, close the book for a while, make sure you can recollect everything that you've learned, that you can retain the information that you just read, and then proceed with the remaining chunks in a similar manner.
So the first revision you did like this, you read it bit by bit, and you made your notes.
So that is the learning part of the chapter.
Yeah.
Then you need to keep revising it. So if I read it today, then I need to revise it, say, in a week's time.
Oh, really?
To make sure that I haven't forgotten what I had read.
Okay.
So you can do that for all subjects and for all chapters in this manner. Then you need to know how to write it in the paper. What needs to be written.
Right.
So there are some questions which demand that you write just the keywords. Like in English, for example, if it's a 3 or 4 mark question, you're supposed to have just 3 or 4 keywords in that.
Right.
So if you write too much, the examiner will get confused and will not know where to look for those keywords.
Exactly.
But in 16 mark questions in English, for example, you need to write 8 to 10 points. So the approach towards each question is different, and you need to identify it well in advance how to tackle each question.
Okay.
And then the final step is knowing how to present your paper, because that's the first and last impression of you in the examiner's mind, your paper. So it should be neat, your handwriting should be legible. You need to have small relevant diagrams wherever required. You should underline the keywords. Make sure that your answers are precise, to the point, because that really helps. The examiner will just give your answer one glance and will give you marks based on that.
Okay, so that's interesting. But you're supposed to know which are the keywords.
Yes.
And then plant those 3, 4 wherever.
Make sure the examiner notices those keywords, because that is what the examiner will stress on.
Wow.
Because like you can imagine, the examiner has plenty of papers to correct in one day.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that your paper stands out.
Okay. Ananya, another thing that people often wonder is how long should they study at one go? Sometimes you want to study the whole morning.
Correct.
Or so how many hours did you study at one go?
Well, I normally studied for 25 to 30 minutes at a stretch.
That's it?
That's it, because that is normally considered to be the normal attention span. One can study for 25-30 minutes at one stretch, take a 5-10 minute break, do something totally unrelated to what you're already doing. So you get a good break, it's not monotonous. And your productivity also remains constant and pretty high.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you're saying, take a small chunk, read it, make your notes, recall it, shut your books for 10 minutes, do something completely different.
Yes.
Come back, read another chunk.
Yeah.
And keep doing that during the day.
Yes. So I would recommend frequent short breaks instead of long ones.
Yeah. And overall in a day, let's say, for example, how many hours would that add up to?
Towards the end, that is towards say February, I think it came up to 8 to 10 hours a day.
Okay.
And I would recommend studying the more difficult chapters when your energy levels are high.
Okay.
So for me, it used to be in the morning,
right,
because I could wake up as early as possible and study the difficult chapters then. But that's not the case for everyone.
Right.
Many people prefer studying late into the night.
Yes.
So it really depends on when you are most productive, when you can focus the most. So that's when you should study the most difficult or attention requiring chapters.
Okay, excellent. So I think we've got some great strategies there, but I know your next question. So let's talk about coaching classes, because they love asking this question.
Yes, I do.
So is it necessary to attend one? Which is a good one, etc.?
Well, I believe for ICSE, it is not strictly essential to attend a coaching class. It can be easily done on your own.
Okay.
But the reason why I attended a coaching class is because it complements the stuff that you already learn in school. So it ensures regularity, by means of the tests that they conduct in coaching classes, and additional tips, presentation tips.
Is there any recommended coaching classes?
Not really. There are many across Mumbai and many well-established ones. So you can take your pick.
So preferably cut your travel time, take a good one, convenient to you.
Yes. Because I think many students waste a lot of time in commuting.
So Ananya, another question that people want to know is, you're studying the chapter, like you said, recollecting and all of that. But there's the practice papers, past papers or sample papers that they need to do. So when should they start doing them, and how many should they do?
I would not recommend solving the papers until and unless you're done with the syllabus.
Okay.
So you need to know the things that you have to write in the paper before you actually start practicing.
Okay.
So I would recommend starting practicing around end of November, December, because by that time all your syllabus is done with.
Right.
So then you can focus on practicing those papers. So you can, I think I would strongly recommend looking at the past board papers, at least the past 10 years board papers.
Okay.
Because that helps you get an idea of what to expect in the exam or the pattern of questions that they have been following so far. And in the month of February, one can also get hold of the prelim papers of various schools.
Okay,
and
in
solve,
your area.
And solve them, because that gives you an idea about what one may expect from the exam that year. Maybe in English for the essay topics, or Hindi, any language for that matter. And I would strongly recommend practicing writing, because that helps with the speed. So you can time yourself and see where you're losing your time, where you can speed up a little more.
Okay.
So from all these aspects, I think practicing papers is a very good idea.
It's great. So you're saying study the first few times for the sake of understanding and just the knowledge piece. Eventually get down to the papers, and instead of just... So some students take the question paper and write those 3 keywords there. But you're saying actually write the whole answer so that you get a sense of the timing.
Yeah, so for at least some papers, you need to time yourself and make sure you can finish the paper in those allotted 2.5 hours. But for others, you may just write down the keywords.
Okay.
But at least some papers need to be practiced as if you are appearing for the actual exam.
It was interesting, you said that in those 10 minutes when you take a break, you do something totally unrelated to your studies.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of parents who complain saying my child did absolutely nothing in the 2 years prior to the 10th standard exam. So what is that extra that you did that was different?
I enjoy singing, listening to music. Okay. So it could be just, humming a song in those 5-10 minutes, listening to a song. And otherwise in school, I was the head girl. So I participated in the students' council activities, and I participated in some debate elocution competitions. So I think it is essential that you don't completely focus, or because that just spends your energy and gets you under a lot of stress. So you do need some extracurricular activities like sports or participating in these competitions.
Yeah.
But for those 5-10 minutes break, it could be anything. You could maybe listen to a song, read a small part of another book, maybe talk to a friend. Okay. So it's these small ways in which you can relax that helps improve your productivity.
Okay. And let's talk about distractions.
Yes. So I stayed off social media for 10th standard. Entirely. So I didn't even have WhatsApp. So all the important notifications on the study groups and everything, my parents used to help me with.
Wow.
So if there was some important notice, they would convey it to me. But I made sure that I stayed away from all that, because once you start checking, say, Facebook or WhatsApp, it's really addictive.
True. You got that little pop-up window that keeps opening.
So you can't really let go of it.
Okay. And television?
Television, I think I used to watch just half an hour of it while having dinner or something like that. But otherwise, I didn't watch much of television.
Okay. You mentioned sport and to pursue a sport, but talk about nutrition at that time, sleep, and the importance of all of that.
Yes, it is very important because it's mentally taxing studying all this. So it's very important to have sufficient nutrition, which my mother and grandmother helped with. But it's also essential to have enough sleep. So you need at least 6 hours of sleep at night, which most students don't get because of their weird and long hours of studying or other activities. I would also recommend short naps in between, power naps.
Right.
So maybe after say 2.5 hours of study, you could take a 15-minute power nap because that refreshes you, makes sure that you're ready for your next session of studying. So I think short naps are really important.
Great. And one last bit is, how do you handle that pressure as you're getting closer and closer?
It is very easy to succumb under that pressure and to start getting panicky. But I think what really helped me is meditating a little.
Oh, really?
So yes, so you could just sit in a dark room for 10 minutes, just close your eyes, visualize where you want to go.
Nice.
Just stay calm, maybe listen to some instrumental music in the background, because that helps calm your nerves, ensures that you remain in the correct state of mind that you need when you enter the examination hall. So that is what really helped me keep my cool.
Okay, so that was super advice you gave us on the ICSE. Now we're going to talk to you about the CLAT piece.
Yes.
Hey, I hope Ananya's tips and success mantras for the ICSE board examination help you and you do really well at the exams. And in the meantime, we're also doing a part 2 with her, where she's talking about how she got that rank 19 at the CLAT, the Common Law Admission Test. So look out for that video. And in the meantime, if you have any comments, you want to write to her, you want to ask me any questions, put all of that down in the comment section. Press the subscribe button and don't forget to keep watching all the wonderful videos we put up for you. Happy watching.